What's up, Fallstar? How you doing? One of those guys. Welcome, welcome. We'll kick this thing off here in a second. What's up, folks? Good to see you. All kinds of good stuff happening tonight. So this is officially the first night of Anarchapulco, so most of the people have arrived this evening. We've got the jump on everybody by a lot. So there's a lot of camaraderie and friends meeting people they haven't seen in a year, and drinking and eating and partying, and that's that over there is the main bar, and it's probably going to be packed pretty late. What's up, ANCAP Gamer? Good to see you. I saw you streamed earlier. I missed it. Yeah, this is a gorgeous resort. This is one of 3 massive pools. It's probably the best pool. And all the pools are like within spitting distance of the beach. That's the actual sand right there, and right past those huts is the water, is the ocean. Oh no, you had VR issues, man. I'm sorry about that. I'm looking forward to the first time I join your stream, ANCAP, and trying out my new audio intro. I'm looking forward to that. I haven't heard it yet. What's up, Daniel Westfall? Good to have you. So, let me flip this around. What's up, guys? Good to see you. This has been a pretty interesting day. Pretty wild day. Weird stuff happening. But right now, we're kind of winding down at the end of the day, and we're about to, I feel like we're about to start having one of those moments that I always brag about when I tell people about our Anarchapulco trips. And that is, you know, the long, late into the night philosophy chats where we start talking about cool stuff. Maybe not philosophy in general. We just start having great conversations with some really intelligent people. And so, yeah, there's like 5 of us out here tonight. A couple of them, 3 of them probably do not want to be on camera, so I'm going to try and be careful not to show them. But I promise you guys that we do some live streaming, and I would try and include you in some of these cool talks that we have. And so yeah, that's what we're doing here. We'll head on over there in a second. I just wanted to do an intro and say hello, guys. Expectations for this stream are going to be pretty loose. I may end up just putting this thing on a stand and letting you hang out with us, and I'll keep an eye on chat, and you guys can participate in the conversation if you want. And whatever happens kind of happens. So it might turn out to be really exciting. It might turn out to be really boring. No expectations. This is like chill session. So you guys can join us here in the amazing Princesa in Acapulco for an evening chill session. So let's head on over there. What's up, Froggy Master 77? Thanks for the host, ANCAP. That's cool of you. So I'm gonna walk over there. I'm gonna try and keep the camera on me just so that we don't make people nervous that don't necessarily want to, because there's people here that have jobs that, you know, they need privacy, which is totally acceptable, right? So, and I have the first topic that I would like to discuss when you guys are ready. It's all good. Do your thing. Okay. The camera's pointed this way, so don't worry.
Are you going to sit down?
Yeah, I will. You don't have to move. I will protect your identity, I promise. And your virginity, maybe. And I'm going to try and keep an eye on chat on this phone. Kason? I don't know what you did.
Oh. I changed it to 4 1s.
Alright, got it. Alright, let's see. Imagine having a job. Yeah. Alright, we got 12 people with us now. And I have a topic that I kind of talked about, I think, last night. Oh, shit. Okay. I talked to you. Am I interrupting? Were you guys talking?
No, I mean, we were talking.
I will walk away if I'm
Not
interrupting.
anymore.
No, go ahead.
You serious?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll walk away. It's cool. I can come back.
No.
Okay.
That's what we're here for. We're just filling time.
Just chatting.
So the thing that I talked about last night with you was what happens when you change how you parent from how your parents parented you.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a profound thought that not many people, that's a connection that I don't see many people making. And I thought it'd be a great way to kick off the discussion, right? So let me check chat. Good, we're good. I'm assuming you guys can hear okay. Okay, so here was the thought. When you as a parent make the decision to parent your children differently than you were parented, that is more profound than most people realize, because it is a rebuttal of your parents. It's making a statement with your actions that your parents did it wrong, that your parents maybe fucked up, maybe otherwise you would do it the same way they did it. Like, for you to change something from what your parents did is to say that your parents did it wrong. And questioning your parents and what your parents did to you is always a deep, powerful, like, psychological thing that, you know, probably acts a lot in your subconscious. And well, I guess that's the summary. Do you have any thoughts? Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, well, you brought the topic up. You want to pick it up? It strikes me that I'm very sensitive to very black and white, right, wrong opinions like that. And so to me, I think it's really hard for me to say whether it's right or wrong the way I was raised. Lots of things were amazing about how I was raised, and lots of things I see didn't work as well as I see they could work. And here I am at an anarchist convention. My opinion is quote unquote extreme by some kind of standard.
Yeah.
I don't relate to that like the right answer, but I think there's so much power in saying, what can I add to? Right? The best, most positive way to state it, which is not just dippy positive, but actually real positive,
Yeah.
is what can I improve on? There's definitely things that I would do the same as my parents, and there's things I would do very differently. And some of it I'm not 100% about the outcome. Some of it would be an experiment. I just think it's the best experiment I'd be willing to gamble on. I'd be willing to gamble on certain experiments with my hypothetical kids.
Yeah. And I guess this topic came up when we're talking about peaceful parenting, right? So it's maybe more of a powerful rebuttal to your parents when you change something as fundamental as spanking, for example. And I know from talking to people who have made that change, and from personal experience that I won't go too much into, but you can actually have conflicts with your parents. Like when they see you change your parenting in a way that they think is wrong, that sort of forces that discussion with you, right? So, you know, he did this, and this, and you're not going to do anything. You're not going to spank him. You're not going to whatever. Well, no, we think that's wrong. What do you mean that was wrong? That's how I raised you, you know? So,
Well, I think you've got a unique place to stand because you sort out the philosophy. You get principles clear for yourself to the point where you can speak from them. You're grounded in them enough that you can make an argument to do things a certain way. And whether that communicates to your own parents or not is, you know, another issue. But I think you do the work for yourself to be confident in that. Whereas I think it's hard to do that. I mean, what you do with philosophy is really hard to do. And I think for most people it's more of a, I don't know, I'm running this experiment. I just think this is better. I'm not really sure why, but I think it's better. And they can be questioned in a way that they might not have an answer for. And tough place to be. But it is more of a gamble than I think you probably typically perceive.
Okay. All right. Maybe people are less intentional than I give them credit. Maybe, is that what you just said, basically? Yeah. I give people more credit. Yeah. When did this come up last night? Because it was in the middle of something. It was more maybe germane last night to what we were talking about.
No, I think we had a lot more context, but a little bit.
Yeah, we did. All right. Well, that was
It is an interesting.
that was the thing I wanted to say.
It's also, I think, an interesting sussing out of the topic where if your parents are going to say you're not going to punish the kid, you're then pressed for, do you have reasons? And it's at least an opportunity.
I remember the context. We were talking about reparenting ourselves through internal family systems therapy, right? So that's the process of going through and identifying like damaged parts of yourself, and then spending time getting to know those damaged parts, finding out what they helped with in an earlier time in your life, and then rather than sort of shun them and be angry at those parts of yourself, sort of thank them for what they did for you when you needed them a long time ago, and then go back and sort of imagine your way through the situations that they used to help with, but then sort of rewriting history just sort of in your imagination how those moments should have gone down to sort of reparent yourself. So let's say you had an abusive parent. Well, you could go back in time and then place your adult self in that moment and imagine how that would have gone down if that parent had tried that, on you as an adult. And thinking through those old wounds with the adult mind that you have now can reprocess those events, and that's what brought me to when you change that. When you do that, you're saying that your parent did wrong, and then when you change how you parent, you're further reinforcing that message that you're correcting something that was a mistake, that was bad, that was broken in some way, or even abusive or whatever.
I think it's certainly a point to be aware of. If you do choose to consciously change something, it will be an issue, and you should be ready for that conversation, right?
Yeah.
I think it should probably be expected that if your parents see you parenting differently than they parented, and then they find out that, yeah, I consciously changed that thing, that they're going to take that as they did wrong, whether you treated that way mentally or not.
Well, it's like actions speak louder, right?
Yeah.
So if you're taking actions that contradict theirs, it's pretty straightforward.
I also think if you get parents to speak straight about their own experience parenting, many of them will claim, I didn't know, I was 22.
Yeah. No, that's yeah. Yeah.
So if
that was me.
Yeah.
Like my oldest daughter, I was, I think I had barely turned 18 when she was born, or 17. One of the two. I was super young. And so I made a ton of mistakes.
So I think like compassion for your parents in why they did things the way they did, and trying to bridge that gap so that it's easier for them is one way to go. It's a compassionate way to go.
Where's the line between compassion and holding them accountable?
Ooh, that's a deep philosophical conversation. I would say, well, let's start with so much to say about that. What is there that they could do now to alter any of it? If there isn't an answer to that, I feel like accountability is something that they take it on or they don't, but what's done is done. And it's more, you're going to have power when you can change stuff. You're not going to have power when you're relying on them to apologize or right some wrong. So accountability is an interesting one for me, because taking steps like you're talking, what was this, internal parenting?
It's a therapy thing called internal family systems therapy. So you can do it with a professional, but it also easily lends itself to sort of like journaling and helping yourself figure things out.
I really relate to it. Like, I don't expect responsibility from anyone. Generally, I welcome it and I keep it close when someone demonstrates it, but I don't expect it because it's.
Don't you expect that out of your close relationships?
Yes, but they became close relationships because they demonstrated that over time.
That's not true for your parents, though. They were close relationships by default.
By a very different definition of close, though.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like I like the phrase, the family you choose and the family you got. The family you choose is those that you brought close to you, and the family you got is biological, or, familial, let's say.
Yeah.
I think that makes a big difference in how you apply that idea.
Shouldn't you have standards that are consistent across all relationships?
You should have...
At least the basic standards, right?
That's another fascinating topic. I could spend hours on this, but...
Let me catch up here.
Sure.
My parents were totally wrong. They know it. This is Froggy Master. My parents were totally wrong. They know it, and they will defend it till the day they die. They produced me out of that relationship. They did it wrong. Froggy, I'm sorry. Holy shit, that sounds terrible. Techno says, arguably compassion in this case is holding them accountable, aka making better people out of existing people.
Yeah, it's an interesting, holding someone to account in this way is interesting because some people will just fight it till the day they die. So there's some people where that form of compassion, I just think, is going to be a brick wall. But you could take it on as a place to stand for responsibility, to give them the opportunity, to give them feedback in the best way you can, to see if they're ready to do something about it. Otherwise, the more interesting responsibility for me is the internal family systems kind of thing, where you're changing something that affects you, that gives you the better life.
No, yeah, I agree. It's important to take ownership of your current existence. Like, once you're an adult, you own that shit, and then you gotta work it out. I agree. But I still think it's important to hold consistent standards across all relationships, like even familial ones. And even, yes, certainly there are things that happened in the past that certainly cannot be changed in any appreciable way in the current day. But even having that conversation, hey, I've been thinking about this thing that happened 30 years ago or whatever, Dad. I kind of think it was fucked up. Why did you do that? Can you justify what you did now? And just have that conversation. And if they show contrition, if they, seem like they've learned something, or...
I guess I'm making an assumption here. If you make the assumption that you're having that conversation with someone who's reasonably healthy, then yeah, I totally agree. I guess I'm thinking in a lot of these situations, you're dealing with someone who's not really healthy. And so having that conversation is probably just going to get a very not healthy response. You know what I mean? Especially if it was any...
So shouldn't that response then be wrapped into your evaluation of the relationship? To the same standard that you would hold that your friends or other relationships to that standard?
Well, so...
Does that make sense? Do you see what I'm saying?
I think I do. It's just that it's hard, whether it's right or wrong, it's hard for most people to cut out somebody in their family.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, does it determine how much time you spend around them? Does it determine how much you let them into your life? Yeah, sure. You need boundaries. You need to have your life be healthy, especially if if your parent, one or both of your parents is unhealthy. Boundaries are important. But if you're going to honor thy mother and father in any form, and they're unhealthy, then you got to create a space for that.
Yeah.
It's just futile. It's futile if they are unhealthy. But if they're healthy, yeah, I mean, they may be uncomfortable with how they parented, and that conversation could give them the opportunity to say, yeah, I know. Didn't really know what to do back at 22, and I wish I could have done it differently, and it could heal something for both of you to have that conversation.
And it could validate continuing the relationship, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
I think that's important.
And very likely open some psychological door for you to give more somehow to your kids, because these knots are subconscious.
Yep. Yeah.
Huge opportunity there.
That's what I wanted to talk about. How last time at Anarchapulco, I guess it was the first or second night, we hung out here at the pool, and we went through so much over a long period of time. We went through like what are rights, who gets them. We went through first principle philosophy, establishing the non-aggression principle. So it's been a year. What happened post Anarchapulco for you since those conversations? Like, how did that fold out for you? If you want to talk about it, I'm curious. Like, what happened next?
I don't know that I can say anything consciously about that. I think I continue to not get objective morality. I have a lot of trouble with that concept still, and I gain a lot of power and clarity from not that, actually.
What do you mean?
There's what you might call optimal or consistent reality. I think a lot of this comes down to semantics.
Yeah.
You've read and have definitions for these words I
Yeah.
don't have, but
Yeah.
there's
It's very much semantic.
there's a consistent morality that allows you to apply it to everyone, to not run into contradictions. It's something that if the world adopted, you could argue that it would work a certain way and it would be optimal, it would be best. I guess what I always get tripped up on is it doesn't matter how perfect that morality is, how consistent it is. Most of the world will say, I don't like that.
Yep.
And they'll want something that philosophy doesn't allow,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll just make that the case. They'll just put that into law.
Yep.
And that, I'm always left with that pragmatic side of, that's just going to keep happening. But yeah, if you put the conversation in the context of, we're a new country, we're forming a brand new country, and we get to say how everybody needs to interact, then yeah, I completely agree, and that's what I would want.
That was not my position. Like, objective is used in different ways, right? So you're using it in the more like exist in reality in a more tangible way, it seems like. That's never what I've meant by objective.
What do you mean by it?
I mean the opposite of subjective.
So did I.
Let me explain. So like, I think the Metallica Black album is one of the best Metallica albums.
Yeah, that's objectively true.
No! No! So that would be subjective, because it's not based on anything unchanging, I guess, right? It's just my opinion. That could change. It's whimsical, whatever. But if we said the longest Metallica album is 97 minutes, like, that's objective. That is something that can be proven, that will consistently be true, unless and until Metallica comes out with an album that lasts longer than 97 minutes. So objective in that sense. Unchanging, unsubjective, a standard that can be held to that isn't based on opinion and whim and feeling and,
Yeah.
things that aren't math, that kind of thing. Things that aren't based on logic or reason would not be objective. So,
Yeah, see, I think that's the only place I get tripped up there.
Do you not like that use of objective?
It's not that I don't like it. It's just, it's not. How do I even say all this? I've spent so long studying people and communication and how do I pragmatically influence the world, influence people, that something that, for me, that's the core. For me, I have to take that into account to judge the validity or utility of any approach. I don't like that. I don't like the way I said that either.
I was going to ask you to say it again because I didn't get it.
You need an ideal, right? You need some, like, not an ideal, but you need a clear reference point that is argued out and makes sense. And then you can deal with closing the gap of, okay, well, can we get there? And how do we get there? So, I don't know. I disagree with myself.
It would be like...
I object. I object to my own statements.
The definition of a gram.
Right.
So if we define gram objectively, it means it equals some mole weight of some specific
Well, okay.
whatever.
Right.
I forgot what it is.
Verifiable by other human beings. How about that?
Just a definition that is unchanging. And so, like...
Well, but that's... What you're trying to get into is science here, right? The science is, we're going to define this way, and that's going to be repeatable. Anyone in the world can do this process and come up with what is a gram.
Well, not anyone, because there's people not capable of understanding that stuff. That's not where I'm coming from. I'm like, the definition of a gram is objective because it's defined in a way that is unchanging and verifiable. And maybe I'm just saying what you're saying in a different way when I say verifiable. But I mean, like, you can compare this thing that exists in reality to this conceptual standard in a way that is mathematical in the sense that if you run the operation correctly, you will always get you will get the same answer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
repeatable.
Yeah.
You know, so logic and reason are derived from the objective nature of reality. Those are unchanging laws that what's the word? It's been a long day. When one thing follows another, follows another, follows another.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think I'm also leery of. Here's a huge. I'll drop a bomb here. I'm leery of logic as well, but I think that's only because unless you've really deconstructed it all the way back to axioms and you know that you're on an axiomatic foundation that makes sense, logic can take you in terrible directions, as C.S. Lewis has shown us. Right?
Yeah.
So
it's like a methodology and people get it wrong all the time.
Yeah, I think that's my concern about it. It's not that it can't be done well, but man, that takes training and practice and rigor to get all that right. And it's so easy to go off course. How many people are even capable of that kind of rigor? How many people have the training? I know math, I know a whole bunch of topics. I really was not trained well in logic.
And the people that are trained well in logic are not all voluntarists.
Right, exactly, right?
So what does that say? Yeah, no, I got you.
Well, and I think that's actually a good example of the swirl I'm always concerned about when we have this conversation. Establishing an objective process to come to the same conclusion, theoretically, like, it's all there, but to that point, what's off with someone trained thoroughly in logic and science and whatever other building blocks we want who's not a voluntarist? It's a logical fallacy somewhere, I'd imagine would be your argument, right?
Yep.
That'd be a cool interview to do. Okay, you're trained. I mean, that they're putting their ass on the line in that interview, but find someone in that position and then ferret out the logical inconsistency.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty awesome. That's a level of discourse that we just don't get to see a lot.
We got a lot of comments. I'm a little behind. Phobes is cool. He says, sounds like a good reason to not have a state. Yes. He thinks Techno thinks both definitions of objective are two different ways of describing the same thing. Phobes says, quote, not influenced by personal feelings or opinions in considering and representing facts. They both fall under Merriam-Webster's first definition, expressing or dealing with facts or conditions as perceived without distortion by personal feelings, prejudices, or interpretations. Decompiler says sequential, but that's not it. And then my brain is going to be pissed off that I don't know this word until I remember it, and I'll be like, guys, I remember the word. Funny, Techno says, funny, there are videos that explain objective ethics from first principles in about 10 minutes. Yeah, I showed him one about a year ago.
I watched those.
Yep. Phobe says many people who are trained in logic also use emotion in their decision making. Yeah, it's like the fallible human condition is what we were just kind of talking about.
Yeah.
Like humans are fallible, so they have the. See, that's the difference. And I was debating a lot with people that say that true. It was weird. Like out of nowhere, in the space of 1 week, two different people came at me with arguments unrelated to each other. Came at me with arguments saying truth is inaccessible to us as beings. It's just inaccessible because sense data is flawed, so we can never know truth. Therefore, logic is invalid. Therefore, philosophy is invalid. And meanwhile, they're communicating these truth claims about the untruth of truth to me via, internet-connected devices, which are basically long chains of devices that all function on the fundamental unchanging laws of nature. So they're using sort of truth to communicate to me that truth is inaccessible.
And I think this is a great example. Sensory and perception, right, is terribly flawed. It's terribly colored by how many scientists are arguing for stuff that doesn't make any sense scientifically. So yeah, it's a bitch of a problem for sure. Now, if you let that, as you're pointing at, if you let that say, well then, logic is useless and there's no science is possible.
Which these people were. I'm not
they do,
strawmanning them. That's
right.
what they literally said.
And that's just batshit crazy. Like, the game's over at that point. So yeah, if you have these tools and you can make this, how did we move forward? The few people who could do all these things really well moved us forward scientifically, right? Newton, Einstein, the people who contributed original, groundbreaking, society moving forward thought, had this kind of thinking, came up with new thought, and then people who couldn't have come up with it verified it. But you come up with why, I guess part of what I'm trying to say is you come up with a perfectly consistent, objective ethic, a moral set, and you walk around and try to hand it to people, and that doesn't work very well.
Right. Yep. But that doesn't make it not objective.
Right. It doesn't invalidate it, but good for you. Here's a little shiny little box I got. Look at this.
Well,
I got
hang on. Hang on. Let me try and defend that. So
I'll defend it for you. I mean, I get it.
Well, what was the last thing we were talking right before that? What was the last thing that we just talked about? I had something.
Oh, I'm not good at this game.
Crap.
Someone in the chat will help out, I'm sure.
Oh, that's what it was. It was the point about our senses being inaccurate and making truth inaccessible. The difference is, it's a small distinction, but it's critical, is that it's very true to say that our senses are flawed. Our sense data can be flawed. It's fuzzy, it's inaccurate, we have memory that, we overwrite ourselves without even knowing it, whatever. But our senses still have at least some capacity for accuracy. Like, there are times that our senses are accurate. They do give us accurate data. So truth is not inaccessible, it's just slippery, is probably a better way to think about it. Like, that's what the whole scientific method and the whole scientific process is for. It's to reduce the fuzziness of our sense data. It's to achieve a higher resolution on accuracy.
Well, and to put it even more rigorously, you are a scientist, you set up an experiment, you come to a conclusion, and you show the world. Yeah. Now, you've done everything you can think of to make sure your methodology is correct, your experimental device is functioning as expected, and then you come up with some brand new observation. And you publish that, and someone else who doesn't have your biases tries to replicate it and go, I didn't do something because I'm not getting the right results. Cold fusion was that way. The neutrino experiment in CERN a few years ago was that way.
Was it it's called the reproducibility crisis for scientific papers? Like, it was some meta study where they found that 40% of all scientific papers were not reproducible or something like that.
So that's that rigor that takes the human brain.
No, guys, it's real, it's chill.
It's live.
Just because it's live doesn't have to be awkward.
That
We're
means
having good talks.
take it back.
You can't take it back. No, it's not successive. Kaysen, when we're talking
Now
about
I'm identified and you can't take it back. What's up?
when we're talking about free will,
Yes.
it's
No.
no, we're not talking about free will. I'm trying to
Not
remember the word that we used in that argument. And it's for like when things happen one after another in a reproducible way. It's the opposite of free will.
Determinist.
No.
Huh?
What's the process of something that is like one follows the next, like one trick?
I mean, logical.
Causality? No, it's like when one thing causes the next, causes the
Domino
next.
chain. See, you're asking me.
Internet, help! Internet.
I'm an idiot. You know.
Please
What are you
help.
Hi, Mom.
Techno says, and yet we have measured and tested the universe to the point where we can nearly instantly send messages across the planet. And literally, we're like in Mexico talking about this stuff, and we have people all over the world right now participating. That shit doesn't happen without a little bit of truth involved in the equation, right?
But to carry on that point, though, scientific method is carried out by an individual scientist, and then science, the evolution of science in particular, happens by having numerous different human brains look at the same thing and check that first human being, and it's wrought with.
Yeah,
the
and they
first
can
human
still be
being.
wrong.
Yep.
Yeah. Even after all the, most of the brains agree, they
Now
can
what-
still be wrong.
Now, what's interesting about that is that's like super precise, weeks or months or whatever involved, multiple people, times multiple people, weeks and months involved, to get one thing right.
Some tiny
right?
thing.
Yeah. And now you're going to take one of those brains and you're going to say, make an argument. And now I got to talk for a freaking hour, and all of that's got to be truthful in some way. That's tough.
Yeah.
That is really tough. So, taking arguments, preferably taking arguments like some historically documented arguments, and going point by point by point. Right? The treatise on government was something like this.
Yep.
I'm going to give you a logical progression that I think is airtight, and then I'm going to publish it. And everybody else's job is to poke holes in it.
Yeah.
Verify this logic. That's
It's
possible, just like science. But
back
hard.
to your original sort of objection about let's presuppose that we've now found the non-aggression principle to be an objective standard that can function in all scenarios.
But who's going to build the roads, Patrick?
And then we take it around and we hand it to somebody, and they're like, "Well, fuck this! Like welfare. I need my welfare check or whatever, right?" I don't see why that's a problem. Like, what would be a problem is if we were like every past religion in history, or every cult leader or dictator or whatever that had something that wasn't truth or wasn't objective, and they were still going around trying to install that into people's brains. It's like, before we start trying to hand people a concept and trying to convince them of like, this is how you should lead your life, we should make sure that we have the right thing to be doing that with,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Well, and
it seems like we finally have that, is what I'm saying. So,
well, I think this is why we spoke continuously for hours and hours last year, because you had done that work. I had done some amount of that work to the degree I could, to the degree I saw there was more work to do. I'd done the work, but that conversation put puzzle pieces together for me where I could at least now grapple with, deal with objective morality. If you can't handle that thought, grapple with it. Figure out why. Get clear so that I can stand in, objective morality. Right? Because now there's two brains, and obviously many more given what you do with this thinking. But yeah, you pioneered the way and could help me take those last few steps.
and so where has that gotten you a year later?
Well, I think, although I still am not as good at the logical, I could not do the interviews you do. I'm not as good at articulating the logical progression the way you do. I know that subconsciously it's built in now, where I'll have a conversation and just call people on, well, hold on a minute, and I've got something that sticks it to them. So there's something that got sorted out that now can be expressed very easily that happened in the background. it's not conscious for me.
Yeah, and I know what I'm smiling because I know what I know the feels. I know the feeling. Decompiler says he's so going to try and go to Anarchapulco next year. Hell yeah, man, join us. Let's see.
It's not a cult, but join us.
Join.
Or
Join
else.
us. Anarchats is here, Casey.
Oh my God!
Anarchats has been stalking our Facebook page for a while. Uh-oh, incoming. Make sure, no, you have to turn it. Make sure that we don't show faces.
Anarchats, I love you. Thank you for your service.
I'm highly skeptical of you, just for the record. I'm not much of a cat fan.
Show anyway. I said my bit.
Let's see. Froggy says Einstein wasn't original. He was an intellect poacher in the patent office. What? I don't know what that means.
He worked in the patent office.
ANCAP says that you are epic. I'm not sure what that means. Oh, crap.
You are epic?
I'm sorry. I'll blur it out.
Wait, you don't know what you are epic means?
No, Techno, not chronologically. God. It's when one thing causes the next thing, which causes the next thing.
Deterministically.
Deterministic?
Determinism. Yeah, free will
I think
versus
that was
determinism.
it. Deterministic.
Oh, not in
It
an
wasn't the
argument.
first time
Not in an
they said
argument. You
that.
mean like the universe?
What?
You're not saying
Proof that
in
free
an
will
argument.
exists.
You're not.
Because it didn't
You're
follow.
not. Oh yeah, you did say free will. So determinism. Yeah.
Yeah, but not. I wasn't using. I was trying to find that word in the context of our earlier conversation, not in the free will debate. Deterministically is when you have this logic equation of the non-aggression principle, and it's objective in the fact that if you take a given set of actions, which are testable things that happen in the real world, and you compare that to this equation of the non-aggression principle, you can deterministically get the same answer every time as long as you do the math correctly of valid or invalid, NAP compliant, NAP violating, and that's where I was going with the objectivity, being objective.
Yeah. That's actually an interesting.
We got the word.
That's actually an interesting continuation of that conversation. Okay, now we have a morality defined. Now we're gonna ask. Okay, I'm gonna provide you a statement. You tell me if it's NAP compatible. That requires all of that rigor, the scientific rigor.
Yes.
Because one person can't sit down with the rule book and go check, 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 check. Yep. Because they might hit one where they're like, oh no, it doesn't fulfill this. You're like, no, yes it does. And then you got to argue. And then since the two of you are opposing, we need a few more people.
Yeah.
Right. And that few more people could be a democratic vote for what they like most.
Whoa, we went off the rails just now.
No, but as an illustration.
Railing happening.
As an illustration, right? How do you do that validation when every person playing that game can be indoctrinated with the same thinking, right?
To steelman your position, I think the best example of what you're talking about would be intellectual property. Like, there's a lot of objectivists, for example.
Yes.
Which is, we're talking about being objective, and now we're talking about objectivists being self-contradictory on intellectual property. But no, there are people that would hold that to copy someone's song and whatever is a violation of the non-aggression principle. You've stolen. You've maybe not stolen, but you've violated. I don't know what the language they would use. Stolen their IP or some shit like that.
Determinism. That's a word you're looking for.
Yeah, that's the word
Not
I will.
this time.
Yeah, so just to there's going to be disagreements for sure. But the fact that there are disagreements, just like in science, doesn't mean there isn't truth to be found at the end of the process. It just means that the process can be difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean there isn't a right answer, it just means it's a bitch to find it sometimes.
Well, an IP is an interesting one because you could look at history, you could look at principles, you could hopefully look at both and say, well, okay, these principles were being followed at this time, and here's the outcome. These principles were followed at this time, and here's the outcome. There's a lot of ways you could get at it, and yeah, I totally agree. There is a hard to agree on valuable thing that we could label truth.
There were so many people throwing out words. Subsequent? Fatalism? Correlative? I'm sorry, guys. Thank you for trying to help me. Thank you so much.
What a fun word. Correlative?
Correlative.
It's determinism, yeah.
Fast.
Techno says maybe it's time to also come up with pragmatic arguments to convince the more pragmatically minded. The problem with that is that the validity of a pragmatic solution to a problem is always opinion-based, and the opinion can change on a whim. So, like, if I convince somebody that, you know, right now it's best to abide by the nap, tomorrow they might say, well, today is a different day, and this, and this has changed, so I no longer think that's the most pragmatic course of action. So, I think it's a lot less effective to try and preach pragmatics and to do that, because you're just trying to sway people's opinions, and that changes daily. And that's more like, I think humans will put, what was the thing they said in the talk? Like, humans will put up with a lot of pain and suffering if they know why they are.
If somebody has a good why, they can bear almost any.
I got that out of Mises' talk. So I learned something from Lewis's talk. Yeah, that was, yeah.
If you have a good why, you can bear any how.
So I think if humans are trying to be good, and I really think most humans have a desire to be good, or at least to not be labeled bad or evil, let's say, that it's a lot easier for humans to restrict their behavior for good and evil reasons than it is for pragmatic reasons.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So if we can, so I'm just talking about what Techno was saying. Like, if we use pragmatic arguments to convince those people, it seems like that would be a lot less efficacious.
Isn't that a pragmatic argument for why?
That is a pragmatic. God damn it, Kason.
Law of non-contradiction ain't got nothing on you, Patrick. Let me tell you.
Do you want to do this?
Sure.
All right, come on.
I'll grab a chair. Or a table. How strong is that?
Kelby says, "Hey, Kason and Patrick."
Kelbeezy.
Kelbezay.
This is a table. It's now a chair. Wittgenstein would hate me. That was a highbrow joke. That was very highbrow. Okay. The fuzzy edges of language and conception.
man.
I just suddenly got smarter.
Awesome.
I got dumber. That's all I had in the
This is
tank.
some game.
So here's a thought for you, Patrick. What you got? More comments you want to talk
I'm
about?
way behind, so
Oh well, let's catch up then. Let's get with the humans here. We gotta run through these. Patrick is skipping the ones that are dumb. Is that what's happening?
you don't call them dumb.
I don't know what he's doing. I don't know why you're
just-
skipping them. You're not saying why you're skipping.
You just move by the ones that are. Okay, we'll do this.
Let's do it.
Okay, naps are for baby libertarians.
Wait, what's the rest of it say?
It's I guess.
Oh,
a quote
by Michael.
Humer.
Okay. So
ad hom. Moving on.
that
See,
which is
that's why I
asserted
scrolled
without
back.
evidence can be dismissed without evidence, ladies and gentlemen. Improve your comment game and we'll improve the content
Oh,
of the show.
shots
Slam dunk! All right, what else we got?
Some of it's talking. They're talking to each other. Too,
Oh, okay,
so
cool.
you can skip those.
See, he's being a good moderator. I'm just giving him,
Mark-
little poo-poo.
And I'm getting better at like doing this in the middle of a conversation, so I can talk while reading other people's thoughts, processing them, deciding if I want to bring them up, while holding a conversation.
But what's the principle
It's really
operating
hard.
underneath that, though? Like, really?
It's a beating, is the principle.
So anyway,
Democracy is bad.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay.
So here's a thought. Back on the whole like principles versus pragmatic argument. I would start like whenever I'm talking. Oh, there's the camera. Hi. Okay. Cool. So I work in video. You can trust me. I know what's happening. So, whenever it comes to like the pragmatic versus principled argument, as long as you have, what's up? Huh? Okay.
The bright light was making it close the iris.
So anyway, that is a mechanical iris. It cannot close. It is always open. Probably at f1.8.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Dagnabbit. I'm tired. I'm grumpy. That's what's happening.
Democracy's bad.
Again?
No. Sherry Voluntary says, hello, my dudes. Hey, Sherry.
Peace.
Good to talk to you.
Peace, love, anarchy. So, back on the... Help me out here, Patrick. What were we talking about? Principles versus pragmatism, right?
I was skipping the bad comments.
No. But principles versus pragmatism was why I came over. Because you said, you want to do this? And I said, yes. Because I had something to say. This is the one thing I'm going to say.
Do it.
Okay. So, whenever it comes to making an argument, I stand on principle. That's like the first and necessary component, right?
What's up?
Hey, what's up, dude?
Just thought I'd interrupt if you don't mind.
You may, although we are live streaming, so there is no do-overs. If you say any personally identifiable information, anything you say can and may be used against you in the court of Facebook in the meme war, baby. There's a battle for your mind. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you for acknowledging.
Full disclosure. What's up?
Hi, my name is Ryan.
Hi, Ryan.
I'm an anarchist.
Awesome.
Hi, Ryan.
Enjoy
the
long
anarchist.
walks on the beach and taking out governments.
Hey.
Okay, cool. We're meeting someone.
I just wanted to meet some people if I go for a stroll. Yeah, fuck it.
Welcome to the
You guys are
conversation.
talking, so I apologize for the interruption.
Not at all.
No problem.
All good. Okay, so whenever it comes down to like principle versus pragmatist, the thing I start with is like, okay, the principle is necessary and sufficient. The pragmatic is necessary but not sufficient for a valid argument. So like if I don't know, give me a situation where someone would say something that is totally evil, but they would claim it as the good.
Taxis.
Drug laws, IP.
Pick one.
Everything. The government
Everything.
does every day.
Have to die.
Pick one. Which one do you want to talk about? What's fun to talk about?
Talk about Ross.
Ross. Okay, so the principle behind Ross Ulbricht's case is you own your body, you can do whatever the fuck you want with it, because we can trace the electricity from this brain to this meat sack. There's the little like evidence for it, right? So the principle is somebody should not be in jail for making a website. Hello. Allegedly making a website. Hello. Right? A pragmatic argument, well, I come back to like fuck the government, basically is what it comes down to. Because they are violating the principle of thou shalt not initiate the use of force to get something done in the world, and by definition, taxation is using force to get something done in the world, because if you don't pay your taxes, then if you don't submit to the extortion of taxes, then they'll come and they'll fuck you up.
You can get this lovely taxation stuff shirt on our store.
This one you cannot. This is, I think, on Amazon. No step on Snick.
Okay, so
To promote my own competition.
Techno says, here's the thing with IP. It's up to the advocates of IP to point out that to copy an idea implies force. So the onus of justifying that is on them.
Yeah. 'Tis valid.
I never thought about IP from a property perspective. If you take a lock view of property, you took stuff that was out there, you made something from it, it becomes your property. Then what? How do we... I guess part of my understanding of the IP issue is pragmatic, now that we had this conversation.
We could also backtrack to property,
Yeah, I gotta start with.
Let's
because
do it.
we gotta
start
start
with
with property before you get to intellectual property as a subset of it, right?
You want to
Yeah.
do it this time?
No, you do this one. This is like your little baby. This is one of your babies. I'm not gonna steal your intellectual property.
God damn it.
I'm not gonna pan it because I don't want to be bad again.
I'm trying to not accidentally expose people.
Oh, I'm not that worried about it. I don't have much that.
She doesn't something.
I wouldn't if you were.
Does she own the image of her own face, though?
So, what is property? And a better question would be,
Right of
why is
use.
property?
It's right of use.
Why is property? Why, the only why I know is survival, right? You should
Speak up.
have the
What's this over here?
I can't hear you.
Definition of
Oh,
property,
okay.
right?
It really was great.
Ownership literally means right of use.
What does that mean?
Right of, you have the right. You have the exclusive right to use something.
I like
It's
that.
impossible to own anything. Do you own the atoms that make up a pencil or that phone? Do you own that phone?
Did
Not
you say it's
really.
impossible to own
Do you
anything?
own the atoms that make up that phone?
Did you say it's impossible to own anything?
It's impossible to own that phone.
I'm trying to hear what you. I'm
Well,
trying
it
to.
is impossible to own anything truly. Did you create that phone?
What is ownership?
Right of use.
Okay. So it's impossible to have a right to use something?
What I'm saying is, did you create that phone out of the molecules that it's made up of?
If I created this phone, would I have a right to use it?
Well, you didn't create it, do you?
If I did, would I?
But you have right of use. It's your phone.
Did the person that created it have the right to use it?
Well, who created the atoms that make up that phone? I'm going right down the bare minimum. Everything you break it down is atoms and molecules. We can't control those.
Why not?
You can't literally,
I'm controlling these right now.
Okay,
whoa.
Like I'm
but
keeping.
you're manipulating.
I'm
but,
forcing them to resist the pull of gravity.
But can
I am
anybody,
controlling them against
can
their
anybody
will.
tell you what you can or can't do with
I can
it?
split one.
Can anybody tell you what you can or can't do with it?
Can anyone
I'm
tell
talking
me
about
what I
right of
can or
use,
can't
though, right?
do about
It's
it?
your phone. You pay for it. You own all the equity in it.
Right.
Right. That's right of use. If you own all the equity in your phone, then you get sole exclusivity to run that phone or anything else.
Here's my preferred definition of ownership: the right to exclude others from the use of a thing. So
Okay.
it's the right to exclude others from the use.
Sure.
You don't have to use your own property.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
isn't ownership. Like, use is not ownership.
The right
Like,
of use.
You can own something and have it sit there completely untouched for as long as you own
You
it.
can place conditions on it.
You have yes. You can exclusively control it by excluding everyone, or you can choose who to exclude from using it, and you can choose how to exclude them from using it.
Right.
It just seems like a really simple,
I was just trying to
straightforward way
break it
describe
down to even like we don't even really create anything, and so, but we have right of use. We didn't create anything at the very bottom line, but we do have the right to use it. You know, we have the right to place conditions upon the things that we paid for and invested in. That's my point. That's all my point was. Because the bottom line is like, man, does your body's breathing without your consent? It's just doing it. So who owns who?
I consent to my body breathing. I'm just gonna throw that one out
But
there.
you're not telling
Thank
it
you,
to
thank you,
do
thank
it.
you, thank
It's doing that, exclusive of your consciousness. So do you even own your body at that point? But you do have right of use of your body and right to place conditions upon it. So that's just who that is. Sure.
Shakes fist at gravity. That was hilarious.
Repeat?
Gravity violated my naps. You shakes fist at gravity. When I was doing
fist at
when I was doing the hold the phone thing up, it was hilarious. So why is property? Why do we have this mutual agreement called property? Like when we talk about, this goes back to my definition of what are rights and who gets them. Property is probably the most fundamental, if not the only right. So why is property a right?
I have a feeling we had some part of this conversation last year, and I failed at this.
I bet
but
we didn't.
I'll give you. Okay, good. Well,
This is like step
let's-
2.
Let's
I don't
do
know.
it. I know this from an objectivist standpoint,
Yeah.
where if you create rules that are anti-life, if you create any definition that's anti-life, then it's incompatible with humans. It's incompatible with living, right? So it's kind of axiomatically wrong, I guess. But if you have to create a philosophy that supports life, then I don't know. I think what I'm saying is going to rely on Locke's definitions.
And Rand. Yeah.
Yeah.
The from life, therefore, is definitely an objectivist work.
Yeah. So why property, Patrick?
The whole purpose of any property system is to reduce rivalrousness over scarce resources. And it all starts with reducing rivalrousness over your most personal scarce resource, your body, right? Without property systems, then much death and mayhem would ensue. And so if
which
we're,
the objectivists would then be sad at. So
if we're going to have like the first, like when we talked previously about water rights and who gets them, I say this often, and people on my channel are probably sick and tired of hearing this, but we're defining what a shopping list is when we talk about water rights and who gets them. A shopping list is a list of items that are generally items that you buy at the grocery store and you want to put in your cart and take home. Well, when we talk about water rights, rights are mutual reciprocal understandings between sentient beings. That doesn't identify what the rights are on that list of rights, it just defines what a right is. And so that was the conversation we had last time. And so then when we talk about property rights, now we're talking about populating that list with rights. And we have to talk about standards for what it takes to put an item on that list. And when we talk about property, that's like the first most important, most applicable to every breath you take. That is the first right. Why? Well, because all resources are scarce. We live in a finite reality. Our bodies that's the only one you get. And so if we don't have a mutual reciprocal understanding for how to deal with literally the reality around us, starting with ourselves, then what other rights can you have without that? It's like you can't even have a number 2 on the list until you've established how to interoperate with reality. Because property is reality. It's just it's a way to slice up and define the tangible realm around us, beginning with this piece.
Yeah, I guess that's an interesting. So it immediately makes me think of returning to the law of the jungle. If you don't have that, you're back to, I'm bigger than you, I will punch you.
Exactly. Nailed it.
So to get out of that mode, we have to have this mutual agreement. And you're saying the starting place for any other agreement has to be property rights.
Yes, because to make an agreement with somebody, you're making it with their visage that is their property. I'm communicating with you right now. If we were to sit down to form a contract between us, it's my property interfacing with your property. I said that really bad.
wow.
Oh, God.
I didn't give consent to that, just FYI.
You said that?
Is that the nerdy way of saying it?
Oh, well.
My visage is interfacing with your property.
It never worked for me at a bar.
Hey, baby. Want to interface?
Oh, Sherry says you about to get Patrick on his island. Oh, man.
Are we talking about Ancap Island?
Yeah, she's talking about the island, the rape island.
Well,
it's another story for another
it's
time.
a thought experiment. Anyway, move on. Don't think about it.
So for us to even have a discussion like we're having now, forget like an agreement or contract. Like we're both acknowledging, I'm acknowledging that you own yourself and you're controlling your mouth and your brain and you're producing thoughts and you're sending them my way. You're producing logical arguments for me to evaluate and respond to. And I'm using my property and my exclusive control over this property to participate in this discussion. So it's like it's a predecessor to even talking with each other about this stuff is property. Without property, like,
Do we have domains of property? Does this start with some axiomatic definition of property and expand from there? Because this obviously, I would assume, given the prior conversation, doesn't lead to intellectual property as some kind of extrapolation.
right. No, I agree with the second part. I'm not sure on the first part of what you said.
Like we have to distinguish property from intellectual property in some way that gives us that base.
If something, if an argument is, what's the word? I'm losing words all the time tonight.
Just try. I'll translate from tired Patrick. If an argument
Performative
is...
contradiction. So like if an argument in its initial conception is just a self-contradiction, if it's self-detonating illogical garbage, then I can't say that that's axiomatic. That's not what I'm saying.
Square circles don't exist. You don't have to look for them because they are self-contradictory within the definition compared to a teapot orbiting Mars. Could happen. Unlikely, but could.
I think what I'm trying to say is property is not a first principles thing, but interacting with other people is, and that sort of requires an acknowledgement of a level of property.
Like to communicate, you have to accept that reality exists, there are other beings around you, that you are able to communicate by encoding information and speaking words at them and then get a response back, and then you have to be able to trust your sense data enough.
Yeah, and you can't communicate to me the idea that truth doesn't exist without using. You can't communicate to me that property doesn't exist without using exclusive access to your property
Of
to do so.
my larynx and lungs and diaphragm and mouth and tongue.
So I'm not sure that like property can be created from first principles, but any argument against such a position is self-contradictory, or at least contains preformative contradictions.
Let's give an example of that. Is that easy to cook up?
An example of
Of an argument that's contradictory to this as a base.
Arguing against property is what he just said. So like
Yeah,
for
so
me to say
property doesn't
property
exist.
is invalid, one
Yeah.
cannot own property, I have to make exclusive use of my property being my larynx, lungs, mouth, and tongue to generate the vibrations that encode information from brain to brain.
Sherry just said she heart Rape Island. Oh man.
Wow, she must really like Ayn Rand novels then.
What have we done? What have we done?
I met you at the quarry. I broke the statue. Replace it. Yes.
Aw, jeez.
Was
Did the example work for you?
Yeah, it sounds like the same where we were 45 minutes ago about truth. It's the same thing where you can't argue against truth without using. It's not truth. What am I trying to say? What's the word I'm looking for?
Well, you can't send me an instant message, with 7 layers of encryption across, 18 computers hooked up by the internet to tell me the truth doesn't exist.
Yeah, I can't say
Performative
nothing is
contradiction.
real. I can't say nothing is real because I have to be here and I have to produce words. And it's self-contradictory, so that makes sense.
Or at least it would be insane
You
for you
can
to do
say
that.
nothing is real.
I can say it.
Hey. That's a dad joke for philosophers. Thank you very much.
Oh man. Oh man. Sherry says it's Patrick's fault.
You don't know?
No, never heard that before.
Oh no, it's not a thing to repeat.
Sherry says it's Patrick's fault. Decompiler says everyone on Rape Island loves Rape Island. I guess we need to talk about Rape Island at some point.
We? Not part of that we. That's the royal we. It's a common trap that statists
man.
play.
Yeah, I'm seeing that now. Thanks for pointing that
We
out.
need to do that.
Oh, did you talk to him about that earlier?
Yeah, he pointed it out
Only
earlier.
missingly, because I used the royal you. I was like, I would like. No, I did not say I would like. I said, would you like to rejoin the Borg brain? And he said, the unnamed one, said, sure. And then I said, wait. I mean to say I want to rejoin the Borg brain bang. Wow. Would you like to
The
join?
Borg bang?
Interface,
Like
you know?
Star
we're
Trek.
interfacing over
That's
here,
how you
so-
interface.
Our visages are interfacing.
That's how Borgs do.
001100111 big 0. So yeah,
Zero face.
What's up, General Extravaganza? That is Ryan.
oh rock.
I'm doxing him right now. What's up, Ryan? He's the original partner in Disenthrall. He's in the
Ryan
chat.
is hilarious.
He's a
and
badass.
Smart.
Yep.
Smart as a whip. If whips had IQs above 150,
He also designed the Disenthrall logo.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was all him.
pulling back the curtain.
Yeah.
Very schmat guy.
So Rape Island it comes from an analogy. It's actually, I just say on the island versus in the city. And this is a conversation that kept coming up with people that were trying to ask me like philosophical edge case scenarios that were trying to stump the non-aggression principle. And there's a lot of uncomfortable lines when you get really close to trying to find edge cases where people say the nap breaks down. And all that is so the non-aggression principle is very close to like first principles. It's very close to like bare metal philosophy. It on an island, without society, without any kind of behavioral norms or cultural traditions or knowledge of, like, as if you were an alien landing on the planet. You had no conception of anything you were seeing, really, as far as behavioral interactions or anything like that. You would still be able to apply the non-aggression principle in a very raw way. Now, when you get into things like the question of, like, what constitutes a threat, well, all threats are subjective. There is no objective definition of threat, and if anybody out there can point me to one, please, that would be a huge breakthrough. But,
I got one. When someone is killing you against your consent, that would be a threat.
No, that's an actual killing. That's past threat.
No, it's a threat in progress. Like,
So that's just aggression. No, the threat is leading up to it.
oh, before physical action has taken place.
Right, because a lot of people use threats to justify actual defensive force.
And you can't use any kind of culture or communication, so it can't be like somebody stabs someone with a shiv and it's like, I'm coming for you! Like, because like clearly he did the shiving, and now he's coming to shiv you.
The shivering.
Yeah. He's the //slinger.
So, bare metal philosophy, I say, is on the island.
It was funny to me. Sorry.
Okay.
I got a little lost in the shivering.
Bare metal philosophy, you're on the island. What constitutes a threat? If anybody can provide an objective definition
Yeah,
of a
so
threat, you'll pay them $1 million.
It means applying the non-aggression principle absent any kind of subjective cultural norms, any kind of subjective definitions of threats, any kind of... this came up a lot when we were talking about doorbell bombs. You know, are doorbell bombs a violation of the non-aggression principle? So if you build a bomb into your doorbell and somebody walks up and rings your doorbell and they explode, have you violated their nap? And it's a good example of the dividing line between on the island versus in the city. So on the island, when we're bare metal philosophy, there are no cultural norms. There's no idea of what a doorbell is. There's no idea of it's culturally acceptable to walk on other people's property up to their front door and push buttons that belong to them. Like, none of that cultural stuff is in the mix. We're bare metal from axiomatic first principles up to the non-aggression principle. You're on the island. None of that stuff exists. Doorbell bombs are perfectly acceptable. Like, you're effectively trespassing and pushing, touching other people's property. In the city, obviously, that's a problem because you have these cultural norms and you have all these subjective definitions that are just accepted as part of behavior.
Well, but that's the mess I made earlier, right? You have to take all that out of the picture.
Yep.
We are defining a in isolation axiomatic thing.
Right, and so in the city, though, is like, I'm not saying a city couldn't exist that functioned on bare metal philosophy. I'm saying that I would not want to live in one.
Well, and the idea would have to. Well, actually, this kind of gets to what I asked. The other side of what I asked earlier. Okay, so doorbell bombs are okay because now you have to trespass to push the button. How do you initiate contact? There would have to be a further on top of property, obviously.
You're presupposing that they have a right to initiate contact.
No, I'm not pulling for a right. I'm just saying, like, we would then have to agree on top of property. We'd now have to make a new agreement called there'll be little buttons outside houses, and if there is one, then you're consenting to hearing a noise inside, because that's why you put that on your house.
Yep.
Some kind of agreement about that.
Yep. But absent those cultural norms, maybe you put the doorbell there because you wanted to blow people up to trespass.
Yeah.
Let's see. Gender identity is
Welcome
a social construct. Yeah, I don't know what you're... so the rape island part, that's what it was. So I had this...
You forgot about that part?
Yeah! So I had this debate with a dude on a Discord server. They bounced me into some other person's Discord server, and they put me in the middle of a debate with this lawyer guy who was dominant on the server at the time. And it took me 2 hours, but I just utterly destroyed him. Like, I kept taking his logical arguments to their end, and he was basically saying, well, if I have the power to force you to do something, then it is okay. Then it is moral. Might makes right.
Physical power?
Might makes right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm like, so if you and I are on an island, and I have the power to rape you, is that okay? Is that good? Is that moral? And you can watch this video on my channel, and if you guys haven't seen this, search my channel for Rape Island. I literally get him to admit that that's okay.
I'm going to
It's
make you
not-
a t-shirt that says that, by the way. Search
don't know.
my channel for Rape Island.
So, because he was so cornered and he wouldn't admit that he was wrong, he took it all the way to Rape Island, where rape is okay and murder is okay.
You finally agreed to that?
As long as I have the power to do it, that's
Wow, that's pretty epic.
okay. It's fucked
That's
up.
pretty
What it is.
amazing.
Anyway, so that's Rape Island. Wow. Sorry, Ryan, I doxed you. Sherry Voluntary says, killing you, quote, killing you against your consent. Case in 2020, aka murder.
Yeah, baby. That would be a threat. I just wanted you to clarify that it has to be like demonstrable physically or pre-physical demonstration.
Thanks, Phobes. He linked the doorbell video.
So if you threaten, I'm gonna try to follow this crazy statement. You tie someone up, you put their head in a guillotine, you set a timer that will pull the string and drop the guillotine. That's a threat to life.
Is it? Would an alien understand what was about to happen? Or would you have to know what a guillotine was? And would you have to know that necks are important to humans?
Would an alien?
Maybe it's like, maybe they saw like a guy coming at you with toenail clippers at a salon, and I mean, how would they know that that was good? How would they know that chopping a toenail off wasn't going to kill you, but chopping a head off would?
Know thyself. I have no idea.
That's the struggle.
This
with
is why the
threats.
TSA is so confused with my toenail clippers.
Oh,
I never realized that.
Ding, ding,
They're
ding.
threatened. Yeah. All right.
did we finish with property? I think we did.
The thing that we haven't gotten to, I don't know if we finished anything, but the thing we haven't gotten back to is intellectual property. So, assuming that we got somewhere with property, how can we distinguish intellectual property as not just property? As somehow not property, actually.
Oh, so it goes to why is property. Property is a mutual agreement on how to manage scarce resources. Intellectual property is not scarce. It's not tangible. It's not rivalrous. That's the other part of property. Is the necessity of a property system comes from the rivalrousness of property, which comes from the scarcity of property. Without rivalrousness, without scarcity, you don't have property, you have nothing to fight over. So any justification for fake property, like it sort of creates two things.
This is like fake rights. This is like what do we call them? Economic rights. I never thought about it before, but intellectual property is not property, kind of like
Is not
in
intellectual
economic rights are not rights.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So there's two main problems, and I'll start with the biggest one rather than bury the lead. So the biggest problem with intellectual property is that it controls people's real property that they don't own. So what that means is if I were to pull out a piece of paper right now and draw a picture, I instantly gain, through the guns of government, control over every piece of property you use the moment you try and arrange your property in this shape.
Right.
I don't have the right to control your property. So intellectual property breaks the sort of the predecessor, the actual property. It overrides actual property. It gives me control of literally everyone in the world's property, a little piece of control, through the guns of government.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because remember, the property is the right to exclude others from the use of a thing. And the moment I draw a picture, you have now lost a little piece of the right to exclude me from controlling your property.
Okay, so I have no idea where this is going to go, but I had a thought that I'm sure is interesting. When you say scarce, what struck me was a new invention, a new idea, was infinitely scarce before being discovered, right? Once discovered, there's no way to define it as scarce.
Because it's not property. It doesn't exist. Concepts don't exist. Ideas, inventions, or concepts.
Ideas are immediately 100% non-scarce once they are discovered.
They just don't. They don't exist.
Yeah.
In a
But
tangible
scarce.
sense.
Have you had the data
Oh,
matter
I see.
media conversation? Data, like the
So-
organization of crops?
No.
That would be a fun next one.
So
I demand it.
One more thought here, because the intellectual property arguments are fine with trade secrets, right? If you came up with an idea and you trade secret it, you keep it unavailable to the world.
That's not what a trade secret is.
Okay.
So a trade secret is using the guns of government to force everyone else to keep your secret.
Okay.
If you want to invent something and literally keep it a secret, go for it. If
Yeah.
you're registered as a trade secret, now you're using guns to control other people. So if they happen upon your secret, they are controlled in
Registered
what they can
trade
do with it.
secrets? I don't think I
Registered
knew
or
that.
just kept secret within an organization.
Yeah, I meant
I don't
kept
think
secret
it's
probably because I
registered.
didn't understand the
I don't think
definition
it's registered, but it is. It's the ability to sue other people.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, you write it up internally with a date, and you can prove that we thought of this first.
You
I
gave
got
away
it.
the
Yeah.
formula to Coca-Cola.
Yeah. So if we say secret, and you can have a contract with an employee to say, hey, we don't talk about this.
Yes.
Okay.
But if a rando accidentally, or even if, I don't know about trespassing.
Looking over a fence.
Yeah. If somebody, like if your fence blew down and I saw the recipe for Coca-Cola and I don't have a contract with you, you can't use force or guns of government to control me from disseminating your trade secret.
Yeah, because you messed up.
I didn't agree to that.
Yeah. All right, good. So, what was...
That parlays nicely into the farm
So
example.
there's copyrights, there's patents, trade secrets. Isn't there a fourth type of IP? Just want to make sure we've covered them all.
trade...
Things like trademarks, like art,
yeah,
Trademarks.
copyright.
That was it.
rights reserved,
Trademark. Yeah.
performance rights, like for musicians and stuff to remix or perform a song, which I would just then play a sine sweep from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz, copyright it, and all musicians are out of business forever. The entire frequency spectrum is mine, boys.
Dude,
All right, we have a musician, I assume.
Techno said something really cool
Somebody
sounding.
like you would know that. That's awesome. You're a fucking genius.
No,
So props
I'm an
to,
audio guy.
Can we do it? Can we do it? That's awesome.
props to Techno for thinking of this. He says there's no scarcity with intellectual property. When two objects are traded, there are still two objects. When two ideas are traded, there end up being four ideas.
There's probably a self-development message somewhere in there around like
I like
how
it.
you perceive the world around you and how you got to be careful what you think.
When you share an idea, you don't instantly forget the idea.
Oh, yeah, you can't transfer the...
Do I get to copyright the for loop because I use them every day?
The for loop.
Oh, I just saw this I was on the plane to Anarchapulco and I read a news story. Some dude wrote an algorithm that generated MIDI files, music files,
Yeah.
that mathematically, it was like 27 terabytes, and it mathematically generated every possible melody pattern. Wrote that shit to MIDI files, put it on his hard drive. He now technically owns the copyright to any melodies that have never been created so far.
That's hilarious.
So from now on, he owns all the music.
Makes me think of the Katy Perry and Flame debate,
Yeah,
but Dark Horse.
that was good.
Adam Neely has a really good video on that, covering the, let's just say, insanity of the case. Because like he plays like a piano, ding, 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 ding. As you can hear, that's Katy Perry's Dark Horse. Oh no, that's Johann Sebastian Bach's whatever. And he runs through like 10 different pieces of music. And it's like, they're all the same, boys. Carry on, Patrick. I'm just filling time while you were scrolling.
Oh, no, that's it.
Oh, well then let's talk about media and data and all that jazz. That was a super fun one.
Cool. What?
Shall I?
Media,
Okay.
media
You wanna?
data, and lore.
Okay, so if you had a farm and you found that you You grow pumpkins. Do you like pumpkins?
I love pumpkins.
Pumpkin patch, hay rides, that sort of thing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Can't get enough.
Okay, so let's say you wanted to maximize the yield of your pumpkins as the pumpkin farmer. And you found out that if you, I don't know, grew a row of pumpkin and then a row of corn and then back to a row of pumpkin and so on and so forth, that you could maximize your yields of pumpkin. You would own the pumpkins and the corn, but if somebody on a nearby cliff noticed that your pumpkins were ginormous and you could put a Cinderella inside one, and they also noticed that you grew corn near it, and they owned their own pumpkins, their own corn, and they planted it in a similar fashion on their own property, they would not be aggressing against you because they've not harmed your property, body or otherwise. Would you agree with it so far?
Yep.
It seems like the IP debate is focused on the data, like the way that the media is arranged, and not on the media itself, what the data is encoded onto. Right?
Well said.
You said it.
No, you said it different than I did. I like it.
Oh, okay. Like,
the-
go ahead.
It's the pattern that the actual property is arranged in is what they're trying to exert ownership of, not the actual media. So it's like the
Well, so yeah, this is what I've thought about this is it's not good enough to just have the idea, right? I forget the book about this, but the example of the steam engine was like the big example in this book about IP. Coming up with the idea is not enough. If you're going to come up with an idea and commercialize it, which is part of a patent, it's the intent to commercialize, then the property happens when you churn out something, that's
confused.
from that idea.
I'm confused.
So you come up with some new invention.
There's the steam engine.
Steam
Yeah.
engine.
Okay.
You start producing steam engines.
Suck it, Rome. Okay.
The property is the steam engine, not the idea.
Correct. The media, not the way that the media is arranged.
So
Yeah.
if somebody can produce property faster and cheaper than you, it's like it's business is where this conversation should be happening instead of ideas. That's really what I think it comes down to. The idea is a false property, but the production from the idea is actual property.
yeah, but the process of production is not property, which is what
Yeah.
like a patent would be.
Yeah, like
Right.
the assembly line
Yeah.
is not property. One
Right.
cannot. Go ahead.
So if you come up with an idea and are good at fulfilling on it, you win. If you come up with an idea and you suck at fulfilling on it, you don't have intellectual property rights to support you sucking at producing property.
It is
That makes
invalid to use guns to make people not use their media in the way that they wish. Would be the principle behind it.
Say that again. I think I can follow the knots if I hear it again.
It is invalid
Right.
to use force
Right.
against one who wants to use or wishes to use media in a certain manner.
Media here just
Media
means information.
media being like a material. So like if I
Oh.
have all the steel and I form something that looks identical to a Ford Mustang, it's still mine. They have no claim to it. They can't take any action against me morally. Like the guys that 3D printed a Lambo. I mean, it's not made out of the same stuff, but it looks a lot like it, right?
Yeah.
Decompiler requests a no step on Sneck shirt. We need to get that built.
No
for him.
step on snick.
So let's try and design that and throw it on our store, and we'll let you know. I think we should do that.
I'm building websites. Website time, boys.
Techno says, what if I wrote an algorithm to spit out every arrangement of bits for a given bit length? Do I own all of data?
Yes, you do.
The universe, so to speak?
We've already established that.
That is a great loophole that should be exploited. We could end the government tomorrow if only we knew a programmer who could do that. oh, wouldn't that be a fun way to program? You know what? I'm just going to run, I just need, hey Ness, I need to borrow your supercomputer. I'm just going to run this little robot here.
This could be a great form of activism. Come up with ways like this
To just clog the
to
system
just own
with...
everything.
To own everything.
Own all the things. That'd be really awesome.
That way, yeah.
If your song did not exist before today, it's mine now.
Yep.
Prove it. Yeah, I've never heard of it. Oh, it's in this MIDI file. You see, if I put it here and put a nice flamenco guitar sound behind it, ba-bam, it's your song.
In fact, you could auto-generate CAD files for a 3D printer without even having to print the stuff to produce all the designs for all the things ever.
Yep. You can start with like a triangle and all sorts of configurations, and then move to like a 4-point square and all sorts of just start building up from there.
So there's something I want to go back to, which is you were talking about the kind of factory work owner who is able to produce things quicker and faster, and that makes them win in the market. But I'd be like, nay, it's he who can convince other people to do business with them is the one that wins in the market. So like it's like marketing and sales positioning.
Yeah.
Because dagnabbit, some computers are overpriced because they got a fruit on it. Dagnabbit, the compute power is just not there, but by golly, they have so much money, their biggest problem is they don't know what to do with it all. Please don't sue. Okay. What else we got here? That's the royal we.
Phobia is being himself.
Ah. I saw the first one and say no more,
We're used
fam.
to not reading Phobia's comments.
Much love.
What do you think about all this? How long have you been a voluntarist?
We want to be on camera?
I don't think he should be.
I don't want to move, so.
Yeah.
Hopefully, like 13 years, probably.
Wow. Okay.
13 years. I'm repeating what you said for the benefit of everybody. 13 years of being a voluntarist? Would that be
time.
would that be the label that self-identifies you? That you self-identify as?
Yeah, he doesn't have to.
Take the
Sit
throne.
here.
Let's just chill. Yeah.
He's very limber.
Yeah.
Can confirm. I'm playing Guess Whom with everybody in America.
We've interfaced before.
You wanted to re-interface even.
In the Borg, what was it?
The Borg Bang.
Borg Bang.
Instead of the Borg Brain.
Borg Bang Island.
Dude, next time there's a Trek convention,
Borg Bang
we need to set up a
Island.
Borg Bang.
Would you like to interface with my visage?
Put it right next to the furry convention. There'll just be a bunch of people in weird suits.
I was in Chicago whenever that was going on.
Yeah.
I was in the hotel across the street. So anyway,
I think I'm gonna
what were you
call it very soon. It's 1.
Okay.
There's stuff tomorrow morning.
calling it? Quick, shut off the live stream.
Muchas gracias.
Good talking.
I'll be open for you.
Yeah.
Take it off.
We should say goodbye to these people. Goodbye, people.
Have fun.
All right.
Good night, buddy. Yeah. I will allow it.
Going upstairs to you?
Yeah.
You're going strong.
Yeah, I'll come up.
Goodbye, people in chat.
I'll bring you your phone up in a second. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's fine.
I do have water.
What a party.
Well, thank you for letting me at least be a witness of that. That's interesting. It's new.
Did you have fun?
Thank you very much.
I just realized something.
I'm Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan,
And like,
the anarchist.
sure.
You said. Okay.
My name's Ryan and I'm an anarchist.
Yeah. That's what you said. That's exactly what you said. I'm Casey. Also. Yeah. I will not initiate force or fraud against you. It's not a-
Ooh, Sherry's on the hunt.
That's a relief. Fine.
Yeah.
Sherry says goodnight, Casey.
Yeah. Like several thousand.
You sure?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Okay.
I'm a new guy.
Oh, here, hold on. Hold on. She's. We have a viewer demanding that if you're cute, you should be on camera.
Oh. I don't know. I'm pretty fugly.
I'm not qualified to make that determination. Yeah.
Hi.
Hey, everybody. Cool.
You need interfacing.
Very much.
All right, guys.
Oh, we're not gonna let that one go.
We step away from the Borg bang for a second. I'll be up in a second. I won't. Well, how long have we been live? Wow, a while. He is cute. Ah. Yeah, the legal impossibility thing is really cool. I like that idea. We should explore it and see what we can put together. We definitely have the technical know-how to make things happen in that area for sure. So, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up. I will tell him your name, Sherry. I will tell him. He lives in Virginia. So, how close is that to Tennessee? I don't know. Dang, Sherry. Okay. Dating service on Disenthrall. Here we go. No, I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was kind of a long stream. It was totally different from anything I've ever seen on the internet. Literally taking like something where we would normally be hanging out and threw it on camera. I think it was a little awkward for some of them, certainly because some of them didn't want to be on camera, and I think some of the people are not used to being around cameras while talking about this stuff. So I think it was kind of awkward for some of them. I don't know if we'll do that again tomorrow night. We'll see how it goes. It was also cool having y'all's interaction. That made it really fun. Some of you guys are funny MFers. But Sherry, oh my god. So we're gonna call it. So signing off 1 a.m. from Acapulco, Mexico. Tomorrow's the actual first day of Anarchapulco. Everybody arrived tonight, so we should be getting down to business. Opening ceremony tomorrow at 10 a.m. Then Larkin talks at 11. That's his big talk. He's going to be like the lead speaker. He's the first one to talk. I'm not sure much else is going on tomorrow, so we might have time to talk to people and get up to some mischief. So I will include you guys when we do that. Thanks for hanging out. This was really fun. I enjoyed hanging out with you guys and bringing you here to Mexico with us. So with that said, I'm gonna go chill. Good night, guys.